Hey everybody, welcome to Regulatory Joe. I'm Joe Boyle, president of ClearFile, and today I'm excited to introduce our newest topic, your filing season survival guide. Today we'll be diving deep into how you can retain control in a complex, fast-paced filing season where the NBPP has been released the latest time in the history of the ACA. We spend so much time in Q1 and Q2 of each year codifying plan strategies, working with states on understanding what's changing, and also CMS for the prime example of the Notice of Benefit and Payment Parameters. We picture the filing process as a Venn diagram, where your filers sit in the middle and all of your respective business areas and stakeholders have circles that slightly overlap all around. Probably about anywhere from 10 to 14 business area units really contribute to your overall filing calendar. So as each day turns over, as you get closer to your state deliverable deadlines and federal deadlines with CMS, those needs and priorities change. Where that breaking point is consistent across all of those 12 to 14 business areas is the high volumes of documents that are being transacted, drafted, finalized, and approved versus the change control governance that needs to be implemented by each business unit. We can all agree, regardless of which business unit you represent, that versioning control is a top priority and increasingly becomes harder and harder as you get closer to your deadlines and even furthermore after you submit. So we can spend all this time on the front end reviewing prior year objections, understanding where deficiencies have been made and where they've been reconciled with your respective filings and reviewers, but that does not preclude any net new updates or unplanned updates from CMS or your states that you participate in. For example, the NBPP. We do know that most carriers were working towards and treating the NBPP as final, so all of those respective documents within the rate filings, form filings, and binder filings, across all of those dozen plus business units, were tracking towards that draft proposed rule. When that rule was released, carriers, generally speaking, only had to make minor modifications as the majority of those federal policies were confirmed and finalized as stated in the draft. There were, however, a small number of changes that did warrant immediate versioning changes, for example, for the plan and benefit template, with elimination of some maximum out-of-pocket limits for the catastrophic plan. That's something that originally wouldn't have a version control issue should the NBPP didn't get finalized the way it did. I think the main theme here is in a complex working environment where it's fast-paced with a number of deliverables and conflicting deadlines, whether it's internal or external, is small problems can quickly snowball into larger problems if they're not managed effectively. So when your team feels behind, the first thing to do is prioritize your states based on risk. A few ways to do that are based on state deadline, state complexity, even based on known regulator expectations, retaining and advocating for your issuer with your reviewers on an ongoing basis, not just during the period of time where you're submitting and under review, is critical. There's a few different ways that issuers can manage their timeline and prioritize their states. First, starting with the most traditional way, which is by state deadline. The method that we choose is going off of last year's final deadlines until the new ones are released. We do know that it's been a very unique year where states have not configured their binders as quickly as they have in the past due to looming federal policy. This year has broken records in terms of states even changing their deadlines, and while this has been the process for the past number of years where states update their deadlines in SERFF, which notifies issuers when to work towards for their implementation, we've also seen some states very recently react to delayed federal policy like the NBPP. We also know certain states have different levels of complexity. Some issuers can categorize the state marketplaces that they participate on not just on the federal marketplace versus SVE level, but on a stoplight level, such as a red, yellow, green. Where are the easiest states to file with the least resistance to approval? Based on the type of plan design that I have, we may know that there's certain levels of objections that may not be present in other states, and we do know that filings may be scrutinized based on the product design that the issuer intends to offer for that member. Some carriers, whether you're regional or national across the country, you could have received objections in the past that warranted significant rework for your portfolios. You definitely want to make sure that's incorporated into your lead time strategy as you look to managing your timeline and prioritizing your risk, especially if you want to keep that plan design similar to the prior year. It's also critically important that you clarify and assign accountable ownership for each outstanding work item, especially as you're getting close to submission. Whether you set a 24-hour rule, 48-hour rule to have all your documentation in place, Make sure you're taking an ongoing inventory for your rates, forms, and binders within your respective workstream, because we do know that documents come in at different times. So as you receive your documents, you build your filings, and understanding those dependencies and those handoffs are going to be very, very important. So understand who your accountable owners are and your points of contacts are for your outstanding materials. Make sure you're following up with them on a regular, routine basis to get deliverable handoff dates and timelines. And we can't emphasize or stress enough communication specifically with your regulators and your reviewer partners. We do know that reviewers can be the same for different filing types, whether it's your binders and or your forms for states with smaller divisions. We also do know that some states can contract out their reviewers to subcontractors or vendors. Nonetheless, communication is key. A couple tips and tricks on how we organize our communications is if you are an issuer that's operating in multiple states, organizing your email communications by setting up rules by state for the contacts. On the flip side, internally, if you're also working in multiple states or a state with multiple individuals managing your filings, setting up a shared mailbox in your internal team is another way to have multiple primary owners by state or backups when needed. This can also prove to be very useful, especially when filing, to ensure that your teams have a fail-safe in place. So making sure whether it's a shared mailbox or shared email, that those credentials can be accessed, especially if you use it for a user account such as SERFF, HIOS, and or MPMS. It's important to stress that and put emphasis on that because nobody wants to be at the 11th hour where you have to reset your password with CMS or SERFF with the NAIC. That could put you at risk for missing a state or federal deadline. Lastly, make sure you're keeping in touch with your health plan associations, and if you don't have time to fly in person to any monthly or standing board meetings or intermittent in-person meetings within your respective state, definitely plug in virtually to make sure your voice is heard as you're working with your state divisions and as you're working with CMS to help provide feedback. Because generally speaking, health plan associations throughout the filing season are able to aggregate voices from all carriers within the state to help provide feedback to improve the process for the following and upcoming plan years. And we definitely want to touch on systems access and source of truth issues today too, because it's critically important to making sure that all of your accounts are up to date, including your usernames, IDs, and passwords for all the key systems such as SERFF, MPMS, HIOS, or even state-based filing platforms such as IRFS in Florida, or even Georgia Access. So make sure your SFTPs are up to date because far too often we enter filing season and when you create filing, surprise, there's old resources tagged to filings or old authors. Definitely maintain a source of truth for the contacts for each database by issuer ID. We recommend by state parsing out the 5-digit issuer ID and making sure the respective accountable owners have access to the right states ahead of filing season. As a reminder, we do know that states and CMS could take up to 48 to 72 hours to grant your access, so that could be a very large risk ahead of filing season, especially the day of. And once you've built your source of truth for your contact information and access information for all your systems, having a source of truth for all your filing information will be key, such as identifying the states that you participate in, the issuer IDs, including both the product ID and down to the HIOS plan ID level, including variants, will be very important to track. Whether it's a multi-tab workbook within Excel that's been successful to track, we encourage you to create one and maintain it over time. Once you've created this source of truth, if you don't have one already, we encourage you to limit access to ensure the quality of the information is accurate throughout the lifetime of your filing and review process. The last thing you want to do is have too many hands in the pot where items get changed and or updated without a reflection or a reason as to why, or any history or versioning control. The last thing you want to do is have to restart work from scratch. Make sure you assign a primary owner and maybe 1 or 2 backup owners based on the content of the work that you're tracking. And at ClearFile, we help centralize and standardize all these components here in one place, creating your source of truth. Whether it's ownership, documents, deadlines, tracking, even state mandates or federal guidelines, we've put all these components into a structured workflow to make filing season easier for your teams. Let's move on to the day-to-day execution of this work. So we do recommend daily huddles, depending on what project management methodology you implement, to ensure alignment on daily communications, upcoming deadlines, any looming or open objections in order of response deadline, any internal blockers that may have happened overnight, or net new priorities, whether it's from leadership or other team members. And then also similar to daily huddles or scrum sessions, we should be treating checking SERFF the same way. So minimum 3 times a day, morning, afternoon, and evening, but we encourage you to check even more frequently to ensure you're covering all time zones for all your reviewers in the states you participate in. And just a few reminders I'll leave you all with today. The biggest problems come from issues that compound across state deadlines, deliverable due dates, systems, and teams. And we also acknowledge that teams do not need a perfect process to reduce risk, but they do need clear ownership, clear accountability, and clear communication ongoing. The more visibility teams have into what is due, the less rework that they'll be encountered with along the way. Wishing everybody the best of luck this filing season. Thanks again for listening in. Give us a like, give us a share, and we'll see you all next time.